Have you ever looked at all the gear musicians use and wonder, how does it all work? My name's Dustin, and my family and I are setting out on a quest to inspire both adult and kid musicians to create new sounds together and learn all about what it takes to produce great music. We'd like to invite you along on the journey as we explore the gear professional studios, musicians, and hobbyists use to create their art. We'll take a close-up look at the gear and ask,
what's this button do?
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of What's This Button Do? I'm your host, Dustin, and today I am so excited to show you two of the most exciting releases I have played in years and years and years of playing with pedals and experimenting with them. There is an effect that I absolutely love, and this all kind of stemmed from my original love of Pearl Jam's The Yellow Ledbetter and Jimi Hendrix. There is this really cool sound called a Uni-Vibe, and those of you who have followed the channel for a while, you know I've talked about Uni-Vibe several times. And for those who are new to the channel, if you go out and listen to a lot of old Jimi Hendrix recordings, you listen to some old Pearl Jam, you will hear a Uni-Vibe in action. It's a ton. It's this swirly, whirling kind of effect. Like it's almost a chorus effect, but it sounds different. It sounds unique. It has this chewiness to it and this throb to it that just no other effect has quite mastered. And I absolutely love it. And there are a bazillion different versions out there, but they really started back in the late 60s. There were two companies, a company called Honey in 1968 that then became Shin-Ei, Shinei or -EI in 69. That made the original Uni-Vibe, and the Uni-Vibe that was on so many of these old records from the late 60s and early 70s. And I've tried a bazillion different models, and the one that I had settled on was actually from a brand called Sabbadius. And Nico from Sabbadius designs these. It's a passion project of his. He absolutely is in love with the Uni-Vibe sound. He studies a lot of Jimi Hendrix and tries to replicate sounds that are in a lot of old Jimi Hendrix songs and Jimi Hendrix records, which there's a lot of different distinct sounds. And we've talked about this before on the channel about how different parts and different diodes and transistors and things inside pedals can absolutely change something completely. Even though the circuits might be identical, one little change in a component can vastly change the sound difference. So Nico actually went and tracked down an old transition Uni-Vibe, and it was actually built kind of in between 1968 and 1969 when Honey was transitioning to Shin-Ei. And he kept trying to replicate it and trying to figure out how to make these sounds, and it never was quite right. I have a model called the Mastermind that actually has a three-way switch that we've demoed on the channel before that has three different types of Uni-Vibe settings built into there based on some of the research that he had done and by tracing these old PCB components. But recently, he has done a deep dive into truly looking at the original circuits from 1968 and then the original circuits from 1969 when they changed over to the Shin-Ei company, and figuring out what the differences were, how these worked. And instead of trying to cram them into a small box pedal like he's done on so many of his other releases, this year he decided to make a true, real replica of that original sound with all the modern accoutrements you could want, but staying true to the original circuit itself. And so this year he is releasing two new funky vibes, the 1968 and 1969 RS, which stands for real size, where he has meticulously gone in and recreated the original circuits used by Honey and Shin-Ei. And what's amazing is you can see the size is still there. It's a big old honking pedal because these originals, they are big and they are expensive when you buy the originals. I've seen some of these sell online up in the $2,000-$3,000 realm for nicer models that sound good. But what he's created here is a great sounding pedal with the volume knob, the intensity knob, and then the chorus vibrato switch, just like the original. But it has instrument inputs and outputs and a foot controller. You'll notice there's no speed knob on here like a lot of modern Uni-Vibes. That's because he also meticulously recreated the original foot pedals and added some new really cool features. My favorite thing about this, before we even get into the demo of the pedal, is number one, the construction is insane. These are heavy, well-built, really, really well-designed machines. But I want you to see the foot pedal in particular because I absolutely love this. On the foot pedal, it has adjustable screws over here to increase and decrease the tightness of the pedal. And when I start to rock it forward, you're going to hear a click. Hear that? When I come back, you'll hear it again. that little click actually deactivates the vibe circuit and just leaves the preamp of the pedal on. So you're still getting the drive and the boost from the pedal itself, but you're not getting any Uni-Vibe. When you start rocking forward, once that click happens, that's when you're starting to engage the speed of the Uni-Vibe. So it allows you to get the old Uni-Vibe preamp sound, which was a great drive and a beautiful preamp in and of itself that a lot of musicians love, love, love. And that's kind of one of those like secret sauce things that a lot of people use when they're recording with old Uni-Vibe. Sometimes they'll just plug them in and turn everything down so they can just get that preamp sound. Well, this lets you do it and actually be able to control that and hold it away from the Uni-Vibe and then slowly engage the Uni-Vibe. And we're going to take a look at this. What I wanted to do, though, is compare the two. So I picked up a 1968 and a 1969 because I want to show you the differences between them. Both are absolutely amazing pedals, but when the Uni-Vibe circuit changed over, it did change. An original 1968 Uni-Vibe does sound different than the 1969 models. So I thought what we would do today is we're going to plug them both in, run them through some amps, and I'm going to show you the difference between the two. So let's hop over to the board and take a listen. All right, so today we're going to be using our trusty Scythe, and we're going to just kind of sit in the bridge pickup, I think, for most of the day. Give us a little spanky sound. This is what it sounds like. Good, clean, chimey tone. Nothing fancy here. And I have got both Funky Vibes, the 68 and the 69, set up on two separate loops of my looper so that they're completely isolated from each other. That way they don't affect each other. The buffers inside of them don't mess with anything. Or not buffers, the preamps in there don't mess with anything. So what you're hearing is just literally that straight into the amps itself. So we're going to start off with the 68, and there's some similar features on both of these. So let's just start off with the 68. I'll show you what the basic controls are, and then we'll dig into the parallel and kind of showing you what the two sound like compared to each other. So we'll just start with the basic controls of this. Now, the traditional Uni-Vibes were really simple. You basically have a volume knob, an intensity knob, and the volume controls the preamp. And when the switch is on, when that little power switch is on, you are now using the preamp. So the preamp was always on. It wasn't bypassable on these, and it's not bypassable on these either. But essentially what you've got is a level of loudness here. So let me, I'm going to just completely take the both Uni-Vibes out and let you hear the level. And then I'm going to activate the Uni-Vibe. You can hear at level 7 is where we've got it right now. There's a little bit of a warmth boost there. Okay, if we take it back to 5 and go to comparatively, like between, this is without the Uni-Vibe on. So you can tell 5 is pretty close to unity gain, maybe a little bit less. If we go anything below that, if let's take it down to 1, you'll notice a severe volume drop actually. That's with it on. Now let's turn it off. So you can tell like it really does have a drop in there too. The preamp isn't just automatically on at 1. You need to get up above 5. I like sitting it at 7. If we take it all the way to the max, let's see what that sounds like. So you hear it starts to push the amp into a little bit of a breakup. Not much, but if you hit it hard, you can get it to break up a little bit. Now if we go back to our clean tone, it's hitting it pretty hard there. Back to the Funky Vibe. And it seems to me that both of them are about the same. And then I'm going to switch between the two. Here is the 60. Here is the 69. Oops, I got the 69 on. Here is the 68. Here's the 69. So you can see very similar volume levels there. Nothing major differences as far as that goes. So that is just the preamp section of these. Now, both of these have a chorus mode and a vibrato mode. I'm going to be honest with you, 99% of the people who are buying these are buying it for the chorus mode, so that's really what we're going to focus on today. I'm going to show you vibrato mode real quick, just to let you hear what that's like, but we're not really going to focus a ton on it. If you do want to see me do some demonstration of the vibrato, yell at me later, let me know that. But let's go ahead. Vibrato on, and then we're going to have the intensity at about 7. Now the intensity level is how much effect you'll hear on the clean signal. Now right now, the pedal that comes with this is what controls the amount and the speed that you've got coming through. So when that's all the way back, there is no vibrato going on. But the second that I engage it, it starts to come on. You can hear that slow moving sound. And as I increase the foot switch, I'm going to push it up a little bit. You'll hear that start to swirl more. If I max all the way out, it really does this really, really fast pattern. Now, the 69, by way of comparison, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to take the 69. I'm going to have it turned off at first. Then I'll engage it a little. Notice the 69, it's got a little bit more clarity. But when the warble happens, it really gets motion in there. And if I max it all the way out, now let me do the exact same thing. I'm going to put the foot pedal all the way down on the 68. Here's what the 68 sounds like. Back to the 69. '68. So you notice the 68 is a lot faster. There's a lot more going on there. I'll just do a single note on the 69. Hear how the 69 is more. The 68 is. It's just a little bit faster, a little bit more repetitive on there. And you're going to notice that come through in the chorus as well when we get to the chorus section, because there is a noticeable difference there. But otherwise, they're very similar. There's just a little bit more chewiness, if you will, in the 68 than there is the 69. The 69 is a little bit smoother around the edges as those waveforms take shape. But that gets us into the chorus, and this is where it gets really good. So we're going to switch back over to the 68. I'm going to take it back into chorus mode. We're going to leave the intensity at around 7. That's just a nice intensity. And then I am going to take the treatle back. We're going to go back and get into the main mode. And then we're going to slowly engage until we hear it come on. There we go. It just clicked on. That nice, just chewy curve in there. Now let's do the exact same thing with the 69. I'm going to just slowly treatle up until I hear it. There we go. Now you can already hear there's more clarity there in the single notes. Let's go back over to the 68. Back to the 69. Hear how just really that it does kind of make those bubbly edges on the 68 start to round out a little bit. I'm going to max the foot pedal all the way out so you can kind of hear what this sounds like. That's on the 69. Let's go to the 68. See how much faster the 68 is versus the 69. 69 has way more of that choppiness to it, but you still hear the original note, where on the 68, the original note is a little bit more concealed by the warble itself and a little bit more taken over. So there is some clarity that the 69 has that the 68 doesn't, but the 68 has unmatchable speed. It's just so much faster than the 69. Now it does make, and this is the only negative to these pedals that I can really find, is because everything's controlled by the foot controller, and the foot controller is not notched, it's just a smooth sweep, is it requires your constant movement. And you can tighten up, it's got little gears and everything, and I'll show that in the closing here, where you can tighten it up and make it a little bit harder to move. But no matter what, finding that sweet spot and holding it there is trickier on these, where on like a modern vibe, like some of the other like funky vibes that Sabbadius has done, when you have a speed knob, you could set the speed exactly where you want it and hold it there, and that is a convenience factor in the newer modern ones, but none of them sound this good. And especially, like, I'm going to put this about middle of the way, what I love is being able to express yourself with the foot pedal. As you're feeling the music, you just get more into it. So I'll just play just something random here, just you can do these kind of cool swells. And what's really fun is, because you can control it in real time, I can play a chord and have it slowly speed up, or I can play a chord really fast and have it slow down, almost like an old Leslie. And just control that as it fades back until you go all the way back and remove it from the sound. So there's a lot of really fun things that you can do there. If I do the same thing with the 69, you'll hear how some of that clarity really comes into play. And the thing I like about the 69 is when I put my foot all the way down, even when I'm going all the way down, you're not getting into that really weird, uncontrollable underwater thing. It's still, it's a quick speed, but it's a like audible, like almost that Wurlitzer organ spinning around kind of sound. Where if I go back to the 68, it's so fast, it just sounds unnatural there. Back to the 69. It just sounds a little bit more controlled, a little bit nicer. Again, it's subtle differences, not major differences here. It all depends on what you're doing and the sound that you're going for. And this is especially important when we start introducing distortion. So let's turn on a silk tone overdrive here. And if I've got, I'll go back to the 68 here. Now watch. Okay, now let's go over to the 69 and do the exact same thing. Back to the 68. Back to the 69. Back to the 68. So you can hear with that distortion, when you get into those higher speeds, you can get some really cool kind of machine gun sounds. And if you were to add delay and reverb and some other effects to that, you can create things with that 68 that the 69 doesn't quite do. 69 is more of a smooth, rounded, for lack of a better word, modern sounding, where the 68 still has some of that rawness and some of that just over-the-topedness that you just don't get with the 69. I think both are beautiful, and I think there's ways to use both of them. So it's really hard for me to choose from. I think for a generic everyday use, I would probably go with the 69 because I just absolutely love the clarity and the way it sounds. All the way down, like even when I speed it up. .68 can do some just beautiful things. I think this setting, when you've got it on a lower speed on the 68, it's just chewier and just beautiful. It's when you start getting faster, it just sounds a little less natural. You really got to be using that for a very specific sound. Because of that vibrating sound in the background and the flutter, it just gets a little bit harder to control that and a little less fun to use. I'll show you one last thing. When I turn on the Silk Tone overdrive, I add a little wah in front of it and then throw on delay and reverb. What you can do using that 68 and the crazy machine gunny sound is you can create these really neat sounds by like setting a fixed wah. I use a Mutron so that I'm getting kind of like an auto wah feature. And if I've got the 68 turned slow like I do right now, this is what it sounds like. Now, listen as we increase the speed, what happens. I love that sound. The chewiness of that vibe just can't be beat. When you add in all those other effects with that vibe, it just, oh man, I absolutely love the way that sounds. So in the end, what's the better vibe? And that really just depends on what you're doing. If you want chewiness, if you want that little bit of extra something something, the 68 is definitely the way to go. However, it's going to be a less controllable beast because it can get so fast in those upper edges. If you're looking for something that's kind of set it and forget it, and you're not worried about it going too far up the speed scale, I think the 69 is a little bit more toned back and a little bit more laid back. So it does give you a little bit more control on those lower and the mid end, even into the upper speed levels. It takes a lot more to get that one out of control than it does the 68. The 68, you can lose control of it real quick. So you have to be careful about your foot on that treadle. And if the treadle gets loosened up and the pedal starts dipping down a little fast, that can be tricky. So you always want to make sure, if you're going to carry these around with you, keep an Allen wrench handy so that you can tighten that down, because as you use these a little bit, they do loosen up. He did a really good job designing the foot pedals, but I've had this now for about a month and I've had to tighten these 2 or 3 times. So that's the only negative to them. But man, I've shot these out against every Uni-Vibe I've got in the collection and nothing's even close to it. Just that sound, that chewiness that it can get. Wow. I mean, Nico did such a fantastic job here. These truly are the end all be all of Uni-Vibes, and insane. One last thing that we did not talk about, I'm going to shut off the effects real quick. And I'll leave a reverb on, but I am going to knock the intensity all the way up on both of them just so you can hear them. I'll go back to the 68 real quick, and I'm just going to play you just a little bit more with that 68 with the intensity all the way up. I like having the intensity down just a little because, when you click it on, there's a real noticeable change when you first get it on, and the higher that intensity is, the more you're going to notice that. And just those effects become a little less subtle the more intense it is. And on the 69, it's actually a little bit softer, so it's a little easier. So I'll transition here. Notice when I turned that on, it didn't get quite as harsh. And all the way up. It's still a nice sound, and that's what I mean, is it's just a little bit more controllable, a little bit more tameable, and that's the nice thing about the 69. If you're just looking for a good all-around Uni-Vibe, 69 is the way to go. If you want something that screams, I'm a Uni-Vibe and there is Uni-Vibe in this song, that's where the 68 shines. The 68 is not subtle, it is not quiet, it is, hello, I'm a Uni-Vibe and I want to make this song sound like it has a Uni-Vibe in it. That's where the 68 is just the absolute bomb, and I think that's why I kind of partial to it. I just absolutely love the beautiful singing throbbiness of the 68. All right, so I hope that all made sense. I know it's a lot, and I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, so it wasn't a lot of intense, in the mixed sounding things. I just wanted you to hear a few of those sounds so you could hear that difference. And the most important thing, I think, is really that speed and the max speed that you can hit on a 68 versus a 69. And also, from a sound engineer aspect, the rounding of the edges on a 69 versus a 68. You could hear that 68 warble is just a little bit more intense, a little deeper, a little throbbier than the 1969. So if you're looking for a clean, more subtle recording, that 69 is really where it's at. But if you want to get that gnarly wobble, like I talked about in the video, 68 really is my jam. Like, I just think it's such a cool, unique, distinct sound. You just got to be careful. If you don't want to get that underwater warbly sound, you need to dial back the intensity and be careful about getting too far down on the foot pedal. And like I mentioned in the video, you can see these up close, but those little screws right there are what I was talking about. Make sure you keep those nice and tight. It's just a flat blade screw. Just keep them tight so that way you don't get any drift. The looser they get, the more, because these are well-made pedals and because they're heavier metal, it can start to drift on you and slowly lower down if you're not careful. So just make sure to keep those nice and tight and you'll be golden. Outside of that, These pedals are insane. I know they're a pricey pedal. I know this is not for everyone. I will say it is one of the more expensive Uni-Vibes out there on the market. But compared to true old vintage models that are still in great condition, A, they're less money than that, and B, they're new. So you don't have to worry about them falling apart for several years. Where these old vintage models, man, you just don't know what you're going to get. It can be a little dangerous. So just be careful of that. Outside of that, I mean, these things sound like the originals. I wish I still had my old one so I could do a comparative shootout for you. If I can track down an old one, I actually had one I sold to a buddy of mine when I got the Mastermind. So if I can track down that old Uni-Vibe, I'll try to do a shootout side by side. But I'm telling you, from my ears and from everything I'm hearing, these sound phenomenal compared to my old one. I have zero regrets. I would much rather have this than that old one because that old one could get real finicky sometimes and wouldn't quite work right. Where this, I mean, it's just consistent. It sounds beautiful. It sounds absolutely killer. So I can't say enough good things about these. Nico, I genuinely don't think there's anybody out there that knows more about the Uni-Vibe circuit out there right now. Maybe Tinsley. Tinsley does a really good job too, but I just really think Nico is doing some amazing things right now, and I just could not be more excited to see where these go in the future. I really don't know how it can get any better than this. I really don't think it can. So I would highly recommend these. Please, 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 if you have played one of these, comment down below. If you have not, but you've actually tried some other Uni-Vibes and you want me to do a shootout against some of these other Uni-Vibes, I've got a ton here in the studio. So I'm glad to do that. If there's any special pedals you want me to try to shoot out or just to play on my own and give you some feedback, please, please, please comment down below and I will be glad to do that and let you know what I think and give you some differences between them and give you some ideas on how you can do that. And for those who are looking for a less expensive version, if you're looking for some feedback, I will tell you Sabbadius does make some less expensive versions that are very, very good. The Mastermind, even their smaller basic Uni-Vibes sound great, just not quite as good as these. I do think the Good Vibrations from JHS that they did last year sounds really, really good as well. And I'm still blown away by the ER2 series from Thorpe. I think those are absolutely wonderful sounding Uni-Vibe circuits, and just second to none. And Jam Pedals Retro Vibe. I think all of those are fantastic Uni-Vibe. Someday we'll try to do a one-on-one. Maybe I'll have a guest come on and play some fun guitar that knows some Jimi Hendrix tunes, and we'll try them all out and shoot them out that way and let you guys hear those. But anything that you'd like to see me compare, just throw it down here in the notes. As always, I'd like to thank my friends over at Palen for having me on this week. In the coming weeks, we're going to be seeing some new, really, really fun things. I've got a couple of new Thorpe pedals we're going to show off. We're going to talk a little bit about the Sputnik 2 from Spaceman, which is just an absolutely insane pedal. And then we're also going to be looking at the new Badcamp amp and hopefully the new Jack White triple caster here very, very shortly. So I'll have updates on those soon. Well, as always, thank you so much for coming out this week. Take care and have a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon.